I want to read you bedtime stories. So come here. It's the perfect time of the season after all to read some scary stories. So come, let's cuddle, and I'll read you all of the nice creepypastas I like to read. Nice. Are you all cozy now? Good. You better be. 'Cause now, while we're cuddling, I'm going to read you my favorite creepypastas. So get ready and make sure you can still try to get some rest. Candle Cove. It comes most often at night. That memory gnawing in some corner of your mind like a rodent chewing the corners of the dry wall. The memory of some brightly lit cartoon funland or a world of puppets. A memory of a TV show you would watch, seated cross-legged on the living room floor with the fixed, enthusiastic attention only a child can give. Attention that you wish now you perhaps hadn't given so freely. For there is something about that show, something about the discordant music, the details of the characters, their motivations, and the storylines. The fixed, maniacal grins that seems, looking back, to be altogether too sinister to be a children's show. You tried to block the memory out, and yet, there in the back of your mind, most often at night, the puppet's fixed grin keeps on smiling. Net Nostalgia Forum, Television, Local. Sky Shale 033. Subject, Candle Cove Local Kids Show. Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. Mike Painter 65. Subject, R.E. Candle Cove Local Kids Show. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Sky Shell. Yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll. It looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though. Jareen, 2005. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what you mean, Sky Shale. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12, and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was on channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I can remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be with friends and pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was Calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something? Think it was Janice. Skyshield 033. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the laughingstock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked. Mike Painter 65. I remember now too. Do you remember this part, Sky Shill? You have to go inside. Sky Shill 033. Ugh, Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would just push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With his two eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh, it looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above a really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin Hart. I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare fuel. Jaren 2005. That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he had only one eye. But yeah. The villain was another marionette. The Skin Taker. I can't believe they let us watch that back then. Kevin Hart. Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker. What kind of a kids show are we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings, just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape, and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty. Sky Shaw 033. Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be a children's skin? Mike Painter 65. Yeah, I think so. Remember, his mouth didn't open and close, his jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the Skin Taker didn't look at the girl but at the camera and said, "To grind your skin." SkyShield 033. I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had, where the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically, and just all screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. Kevin Hart. I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. SkyShell 033. No. Not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place, crying and screaming for the whole show. Kevin Hart. Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear to God I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Jaren 2005. Oh God, yes. The little girl Janice, I remember seeing her shake, and the skin taker screaming through his gnashing teeth, his jaw careening so wildly I thought it would come off at its wire hinges. I turned it off, and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother, and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. Mike Painter, 65. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kids' show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why. And she said, because I used to think it was so strange that she said, I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove now, Mom. And then you would tune the TV to static and jets. You would just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show. Polybius. In Portland, Oregon in 1981, an unheard of new arcade game appeared in several suburbs, something of a rarity at the time. This game was called Polybius. The game proved to be incredibly popular to the point of addiction, and queues formed around the machines, quickly followed by clusters of visits from men in black. Rather than the usual marketing data collected by company visitors to arcade machines, they collected some unknown data, allegedly testing responses to the psychoactive machines. The players themselves suffered from a series of unpleasant side effects: amnesia, insomnia, nightmares, night terrors, and appearing as having been caused by the game in various versions of the legend. Some players stopped playing video games, while it is reported that one became an anti-video game activist. An alternative story is, Polybius is an urban legend about a rare arcade game released in 1981. The game was created by a mysterious company called Sinnelsocian, German for Senstellation, and was a puzzle/shoot-'em-up somewhat like Tempest. It was only released in a few suburbs of Portland, Oregon. It was supposedly very popular, with people forming long lines to play it. However, players reported strange things about the game, such as hearing a woman crying and seeing grotesque faces out of the corner of their eyes. Players would also have nightmares, experienced nausea, headaches, blackouts, or even developed amnesia. Some even committed blank. Others stopped playing video games altogether, and at least one became an anti-video game activist. According to the owner of an arcade, men wearing black suits would often come to collect records from the game. They did not take any money, simply data on gameplay. Because of this, the leading theory is that it was some sort of government experiment using subliminal messages. The game remains in obscurity, as around 1 month after its release, all of the cabinets suddenly disappeared. One cabinet reappeared in an arcade in 1998, but quickly disappeared again. While some have tried to recreate the game, no one has ever found the original ROM. Dead Bart. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refused to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is a lost episode from season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. No one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the lost episode was written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present results in them getting very angry and forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt. The episode's production number was 7G44. The title was Dead Bart. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about this will cause them to do everything they can to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd, and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I had followed him, probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. When I mentioned the lost episode, though, all color drained from his face and he started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed a piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. He begged me never to mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather not say what it was, for reasons you'll see in a second. I entered the address into my browser, and I came to a site that was completely black, except for a line of yellow text, a download link. I clicked on it, and the file started downloading. Once the file was downloaded, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restore didn't work. The entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this, though, I copied the file onto a CD. I tried to open it on my now empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other episode, but had poor quality animation. If you've seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar but less stable. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer seemed angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa seemed anxious, Bart seemed to have genuine anger and hatred for his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons going on a plane trip. Near the end of the first act, the plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around as you'd expect. However, as the plane was about 50 feet off the ground, Bart broke a window and the plane was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea. That's the animated style of the Simpsons world represented life, and that death turned things more realistic. This was used in this episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move, and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with a shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at their table crying. The crying went on and on. It got more pained and sounded more realistic. Better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. The crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with the title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletally thin and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to the grave, Bart's body was just lying in front of his tombstone, looking just like it did at the end of Act 1. The family started crying again. Eventually they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the version I saw. You can't tell what Homer is saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest star on them. Some that no one had heard of in 1989, some that haven't been on the show yet. All of them had death dates on them. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were when they would die. You can try to use the tombstones to predict the death of living Simpson guest stars, but there's something odd about the most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same date. The next creepypasta is Eyeless Jack. Hello, my name is Mitch, and I'm here to tell you guys about an experience I had. I don't know if it was paranormal or whatever stupid words people use to describe a supernatural phenomena, but after that thing visited me, I believe in that paranormal trash now. A week after I moved in with my brother Edwin, after my house was foreclosed, I finished unpacking. Edwin liked the idea of me moving in, since we had not seen each other for 10 years, so I was excited too. I soon fell asleep after I moved in. After that first week, I heard rustling noises coming from outside at about 1 in the morning. I thought it was a raccoon, so I ignored it and tried to fall asleep. The next morning, I told Edwin about it, and he agreed. The next night, however, I thought I heard my window opening and a loud thump, as if something had entered my room. I darted up and looked around my room, but I saw nothing. The next morning, Edwin dropped his coffee cup when he saw me. He held up a nearby mirror, and I saw myself. I had a large gash in my left cheek. After I was rushed to the hospital, my doctor told me that I must have been sleepwalking, but then he showed me something that made my blood turn cold. He lifted up my shirt to reveal a sewn-up incision where my kidneys were. I stared into his eyes, mine widening. "You somehow lost your left kidney last night," my doctor told me. "We don't know how, though. Sorry, Mitch." The next night was my breaking point. Around midnight, I woke up to see a truly horrifying sight. I was staring face to face with a creature with a black hoodie and dark blue mask with no nose or mouth staring at me. The thing that scared me the most was that it had no eyes, just empty black sockets. The creature also had some black substance dripping from its sockets, so I grabbed a camera from the nearby mantel and took a picture. Immediately after taking the shot, the creature lunged at me and tried to claw open my chest to get at my lungs. I stopped it by kicking it in the face. As I ran out of my room, I grabbed my wallet. I would need the money. I ran out of my brother's house into the night. I eventually ended up in the woods near Edwin's house and tripped on a rock. I fell unconscious and woke up in the hospital. My doctor, the same one who treated me before, entered the room. "I have good news and bad news, Mitch," the doctor started. "The good news is that you had minor injuries and your parents are here to pick you up." I sighed with relief. "The bad news is that your brother has been killed by some thing. Sorry." My parents took me back to Edwin's house to collect my remaining belongings, which I did. Upon entering my room, I was scared, but I remained calmed. I grabbed my camera and then stopped dead in my tracks. In the hallway leading to my room, I saw Edwin's body and something small lying next to it. I retrieved it up and entered my parents' car, not mentioning Edwin's corpse. I looked at the thing I had picked up and nearly vomited. I was holding my stolen half-eaten kidney, along with some black substances on it.
Hi, Saki here. Thank you so much for watching my video. I hope I was able to bring you some happiness, peace, and comfort. If you want to support me on Twitch, feel free to. I stream just about every day. You can also subscribe to the YouTube channel. That would make me really happy. You can also find me on Patreon, Discord, or Twitter. Thank you so much for everything you guys do for me. I really, really appreciate it. Now, take care.